Dave Mason, welcome to Jewish Money Matters. I'm so excited to have you on the show. How are you?
Fantastic.
I have been looking forward to this interview. I don't know if you heard, but I already read your wonderful book, not once, but twice. That's how much
Wow.
I liked it, people. That's how much I liked it. Hurry Up and Fail, How Success Rises from the Ashes of Failure. I devoured it the first time, and then I wasn't feeling well, and I was like, I really like that book. I was lying in bed and I read it again, and then my daughter read it, took it from me. She's like, "Oh my gosh, give me this book." And she's like, "I love this book." I'm like, "I know." So Dave, your latest work is all about failure. Let's get into
Yes.
it. Why a book on failure? What was going on?
You know, it's a crazy thing. It's like, think about like a child.
Yeah.
They start to walk, they get up, they fall on their face. Are people going to look at this kid and be like, "Oh, you're such a loser. What? They don't even try walking. What are you doing?" It's like, no, it's like we get there, we encourage them to try, and we all grow up. We're all born just naturally wanting to try things.
Yes.
Like,
We don't tell the kid, what a failure. You just fell.
exactly. And then it's like things all shift. At a certain point, we get to the place of like, no, you did C work. This is not any good. And we're so afraid of disappointing that we actually encourage people to avoid risks. We're not looking at what did you try? How did you stretch yourself? Where did you move to? We all
Right.
get this fear of failure.
Yeah.
And it's like if we're not comfortable going out and trying things, and if we no longer play and we no longer love the challenge, it's like we're frozen. We can only do a small amount of what we could otherwise have done with our lives. And I realized that for me, I needed to get over my fear of failure. It loomed so large. And so I wasn't stretching myself as much as I could have because I was afraid of the embarrassment and the shame of failing. And I said, you know what? I need to go and I need to look into the subject of failure. I'm sure you know by now, all my books are really written for me. If other people read them, enjoy them, great. They're all subjects that I need to work on. And I don't know any better way of working on something than to choose a topic that I'm struggling with. So this is my exploration, me trying to go and face my own fears of failure.
I love that you said that. It's so good. And going back to how you started, it's an interesting concept that you just shared with us that uh, we know to encourage quote unquote failure, right? We know to encourage it because that's how we grow and learn. So yet we've created a system that penalizes failing, which is hindering people's capacity to grow and learn. It's actually insane.
Exactly. I tell the story in the book of carpool going into ninth grade, and telling my friend and his mother the classes I was signed up for, and my friend's mom telling me what an idiot I was because I was taking all these really challenging classes, and she'd encourage her son to take these really really easy classes with the easy teachers that were going to be the easy A's because that's how you got into a good college. And I was so stupid for taking classes that were going to push me and stretch me because I was just going to kill my own GPA. And to a certain degree, she was right. Her son got a much higher GPA than I did that first year. And he wound up getting into a very good school. And it's this crazy system that we actually punish people for trying.
Very, very interesting. Now, I want you to share though that initial idea you share in the book where you actually opened up in a very vulnerable way in front of your audience and shared, well, I'm kind of winging it here, and this kind of also led to this idea of let me explore this further because your audience had a reaction that was maybe not what you were expecting. Can you tell us that story?
Completely unexpected. So here we were. We had, first of all, our book, The Size of Your Dreams. And
Yes.
Hannah and I had wanted to teach a course around the size of your dreams. And we were going down to Ecuador. We were in the rainforest. We had this whole breakdown there. We thought, this is the perfect place to film this great course about the size of your dreams. And, we got all of our shots right and we had our audio right. And me, I was very afraid of being in front of the camera. So I was behind the camera and I was just shooting at Hannah, and we recorded this whole course, but it didn't come out perfect, and we never did anything with it. We never launched it. It's like we had these really really high standards for what we needed to do, And, a couple of years went by and we never actually put out a course around the size of your dreams. And we're always kicking myself about that. And then, COVID comes out and everybody's at home. And I said to Han, it's like, forget like filming the perfect course. What if we just did a live course? And we put this course together as best as we knew how. But at the same time, on the first day of the course, I shared with all the participants, you know, we don't fully know what we're doing here, but we decided that we're just going to try to hurry up and fail.
Mhm.
And I was really nervous when I said that. That's where I came up with the phrase. It was just something I came up with off the top of my head. And I was really nervous what the reaction was going to be. After all, they all paid good money to be in this course. But surprisingly, they started cheering. And throughout the course, it was really funny to see people kept pushing themselves to try new things. And they put the hashtag hurry up and failed. Somehow that language caught on in that little group that we
Mhm.
were teaching.
Mhm.
And instead of beating me up and saying, oh, I don't want to be in this course if you guys don't know what you're doing, they're like,
Right.
wow, that's amazing that you're doing that. And in fact, the last section of the book, I actually unpacked the reasons why I think why they had the reaction they did.
Yeah. Do you want to share those reasons or should we wait?
It's a your call.
No, tell us a little bit. Maybe go through a few of them because I think there's something very human about what you did. And maybe there's an element of, oh, like I can be human. If he can be human, then in this space where I am, I'm free to learn and make mistakes, right? You made it a very safe space by just acknowledging that you're here to give them whatever you can, but it might be a little messy because you're a messy human like they are.
Exactly. And that's one of the elements. That's the third element we look at as to why they started applauding, why that was not a problem. It's that if you allow people on your journey, they'll be far more forgiving of your mistakes.
Hmm.
So sometimes we try to put ourselves out to the world as being perfect. If you claim to be perfect, if you put on a perfect face, then people will not be excusing of you. They will not tolerate your imperfections.
Wow.
But when you put out to people, you know what? I'm figuring this out as I'm going. Do you want to come along with me for the ride? And you show your flaws and you share your vulnerabilities. They're so much more forgiving of when you are imperfect.
Yeah, yeah. And you're actually teaching them courage because that's what courage is I'm just as scared as any of you are on this journey, but look, I'm just going to go along and I'm going to make mistakes, right? Just like that baby who's learning how to walk, but he has the courage to keep going and learning how to walk.
Absolutely.
And when you talked, Dave, before about your friend's mother, it really what came to my head and how she encouraged her son to just take the easy courses so that he could get the grade. What came to my head was this contrast between this attitude and this way of thinking, and perhaps even Sarah Blakely. Is that her last name? Yeah. Am I butchering her name?
Sarah Blakely.
Blakely. I was missing an L. Okay, Sarah Blakely's father and his encouragement of how did how did you fail today? What good question did you ask today? Right? Wasn't there something like that in the story? It's such a different mindset where this other mother is trying to just get it done with, go the easy route, right? And we know what she achieved. She grew up with this mentality of it's okay to do it messy. It's okay to ask the questions, to fail. And that really gave her an edge. Do you want to share that a little bit?
Absolutely. So Sarah Blakely, for whoever doesn't know, was actually the world's youngest female self-made billionaire at a certain point. And she had started the company Spanx. And when I learned her story, I actually took a master class with her and went through her story. What I kept being struck by is just how fearless this woman was,
Right.
how she kept really facing one obstacle after the next. And she just go through it in a way that, wow, if I was willing to throw myself out there, I know that I would have done something entirely different with my books up till now. That, if Sarah had my book, she'd be runaway bestsellers, I'm sure, just with that type of like, I'm going to fight through, I'm going to do whatever it takes, I'm going to make things happen. And I was wondering, like, where did she get this mentality? Like, a lot of the things she did were frankly strange. I mean, she's cold calling Neiman Marcus and gets a meeting with her buyer. She flies over to them and shows up with her only product in a Ziploc bag, and she starts presenting to the buyer. And the buyer's like, "Look, the only reason I'm even talking to you is because you flew in for this meeting." But Sarah's clear it's not going anywhere, and she's like, "Will you come with me to the bathroom?" And the buyer's like, "What?" He's like, will you please come with me to the bathroom? And the woman agrees. And Sarah, wears the same pair of pants that had given her the inspiration for Spanx, which were cutting off her pantyhose essentially. And she shows, the woman how she looks without Spanx on, and then puts on Spanx, and she shows the woman how she looks with them on. And the woman's like, okay, I get it now. I'm going to try it out. And Sarah points out that this is the critical mistake. Like, had that been me, first of all, I never would have gotten the sale, most likely. I never would have
Right.
tried that bold move. But even if I did, I'd probably been like, okay, good. I won. I got into the store. I've made it. And she points out this is the real moment where people mess up. They get the contract, they think they've won. Sarah realized that, you know what? No, I just landed a major retailer. They're going to put it in 7 stores where not a single customer has ever heard of it. Not a single salesperson understands it. They're going to put it on the shelves. Nobody's going to buy it. They're going to conclude as a failure, send all the stock back. I'm going to have to issue a refund, and then they're never going to talk to me again.
Mm-hmm.
So she started going on the road. She started educating the salespeople. She bought little plastic
I love that. Yeah,
stands. I love the stands. She bought
I
these little
know.
plastic display stands, which were really not Neiman Marcus quality at all. And she'd put them by the counters and put Spanx by the cashiers. And it was just such a crazy move that people kept thinking she had permission to do it. And so they'd leave these racks of Spanx by the cash registers. But she was just acting on her own and would just like slip them in there. And at a certain point, it came to the CEO that there's this woman doing all this crazy stuff and putting her products all over the place. It's like, what do we do about her? And he looked up her sales first and saw that she'd sold $1 million worth of her product. And she says, whatever she's doing is working, leave her alone.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But, I asked myself, where did she get this mentality? Where did she get this whole experience? And she traces it back to her father. She says that when she was a kid, her dad used to ask, how did you fail today? How did you fail this week? And he expected his kids to come forward with stories of things they tried that were above their heads, things they really pushed themselves. And her family, it was rewarded to try difficult, bold things.
Right.
And the failure for her was not trying. Whereas
Wow.
the failure for me, the way I grew up in school and elsewhere, the failure for me was trying and not succeeding. And so therefore, as there's a quote at the beginning of one of the chapters from Stephen Wright, if at first you don't succeed, hide all evidence you ever tried. That's much more like the mentality I grew up with. Like,
Right.
you can try maybe quietly with nobody noticing. And then if you succeed, okay, you're happy. And if you don't, well, okay, nobody knew, so it's not a big deal. As
Right.
opposed to be bold and be proud of your attempts, because this is what is growing you.
I love this. I love the boldness. And I remember when I read Sarah's story, I think that point that you just made about you get the contract and you think you've made it. And then she could have moved on to try to get the other contract. But how smart to know, listen, now is when I have to go all in on Neiman Marcus and do everything it takes to really prove that this can be sold. And that's what she did. And it's all that same mentality of being bold, taking risks, not being scared to to get rejected, to being a fool, or be thought of as a fool. Now, as we're talking about this, I'm thinking, okay, and I know you go over this in the book. Are there ways to engineer failure so that they're a little bit less risky for everybody who's in the audience who's thinking, okay, I get it. It's good to fail. I'm going to grow from this, but can I mitigate risk a little bit here, guys?
Exactly. And that's one of the big things that I try to show in the book is that really failures actually can suck. I don't want to put out there at all that failure is this amazing thing. In fact, chapter 2 of the book talks about this disastrous hike up Everest, which for some reason, I was obsessed by. I read multiple accounts of the same journey up Everest. And you had all of these very amateur hikers being led by these professional guides.
Mm-hmm.
And they got away with it for a while and they had a lot of luck. And then this one time they were going up and a storm hits, and you had some of these hikers who literally had practiced on a Stairmaster and not actually even practiced outside, and showed up with brand new hiking boots they hadn't even broken in. Like, these people were not mountain climbers, and a lot of them wound up dying on this mountain. And I want to be very clear, this is not what I'm talking about with failure. This is not hurry up and do something bold, not,
Right.
jump off the building and see if you can fly. This is not where you try your new wings, your new suit. We are looking to engineer failures so that we can learn as much as possible. And also we're looking to really mitigate our downsides of failure.
Mm-hmm.
So some of the ways we do that is something very big in the business world these days, is the idea of the minimum viable product. And I
Mm-hmm.
look at several different instances of that. A minimum viable product, often what you want to do is find a way to test your assumptions as quickly as possible before you actually put a tremendous amount of money into them. So for
Mm-hmm.
instance, this guy who has started shoesite.com, and he wanted to sell sneakers online, and everyone told him this is a horrible idea. Shoes are something you have to try on
Right.
to decide if you want. You can't start selling shoes online. And so we look at three different types of minimum viable products. This is called a Wizard of Oz solution. A Wizard of Oz solution creates the illusion that there's something there, like with the Wizard of Oz, when it's not really. So what did he do? He went around to different shoe stores and he said, hey, can I take pictures of your shoes and post them online? If somebody buys them, I will come back and buy them from you.
Right.
So he made it look like he had a big shoe store where he had all these shoes. He actually didn't have any shoes. All he had were pictures of shoes. So he went out, put these shoes online, advertised them, and lo and behold, people did come and buy.
Mm-hmm.
And that was all the proof he needed to now go to investors and raise the money to actually get the inventory and build the real site. Once he knew the answer, he was able to take it down. So he was only risking hundreds or thousands of dollars, not millions of dollars that eventually came in. And he
Right.
convinced this guy Tony Hsieh to invest in his store, and Tony decided to become the CEO and change the name to Zappos, and it became this multi-billion-dollar site. But it came through saying, can we test this in a way that will create the illusion there's something there without it being there, but will give us the information we need. If we fail, we'll fail very small. We won't fail
Right.
very big.
Right. And many people would look at this and say, well, why should I spend more money? Right. I'm cutting on my margins. If I'm doing that, I'm going to go buy, this from the store directly. But that wasn't the concept. The concept is I need to see if there's really a market here. I'm willing to take that small risk rather than raising capital, putting all this investment into this, and then it fails. Then it's actually a problem.
Right. Airbnb, for instance, is another one we looked at. That's what's called the one painkiller technique. And they built their website in, I think, 3 days. They
Right.
came up with this concept for Airbnb, and I love Airbnb now. I go and I drag the map, and it tells me what locations are available on the map, and it's got my credit card on file, and it's got reviews. Like the initial site didn't have any of that. They saw people coming into town, and they said, hey, hotels are full. Why don't we just throw some? We have 3 air mattresses in the closet. Why don't we throw them on the ground, charge people $80 a night to come and sleep on them, and let's see if it works. And they sold out immediately. And then they started going around to investors and saying, hey, we've got this great concept. And everybody hated it. Nobody thought
Mhm.
people would pay money to be living in somebody else's apartment. They didn't think they'd go for it,
Mhm.
but they couldn't deny that they tried it, they experimented, and they were successful. And that led them to get the backing they needed in order to go and launch what we now know is the biggest hotelier in the world.
Yeah, yeah. So there definitely are ways to engineer the failure, and you go through this extensively in the book, which is amazing. Now, I want to switch to rejection a little bit because we even mentioned the word before, the fear of rejection, and this one is something that really, really stinks, and people, it really holds people back. Because if we talk about business, somebody might be listening to us and say, "Well, I don't have this really big business idea, and I don't really have the capital." Okay, fine, but I have these projects that I want to do or these things I want to do with my life that the real thing that's holding me back is this fear of rejection. It's very difficult for people to handle. So can we go into that a little bit?
I think maybe the harshest line I wrote in the book was that, if you can't face your fear of rejection, you're likely going to have to settle for less money,
Right.
less love, like less so much of else. I know when I was younger, I was so afraid of rejection that even if I knew that somebody I was attracted to was attracted to me as well, I couldn't get myself to ask this person out. And you
Right.
know what? I was more lonely because I couldn't reach out to people. I couldn't reach out to friends. I couldn't reach out to potential girlfriends. I couldn't I spent a lot of time on my own because I had such a fear of being rejected. And,
Mhm.
if you're afraid to ask for a raise, you're afraid to ask for a promotion, then you might get passed over for people who are willing to do that. There's
Yeah.
a really powerful example in there. Somebody I was interviewing years ago for a financial independence summit that I did after the launch of my book, The Cash Machine. And I was interviewing her, and she'd been in HR. And she was telling me that the majority of the men she interviewed and offered positions to negotiated the salary,
Right.
but only a handful of the women she'd interviewed over all these years in HR had done the same. And I said, well, like, what percentage of the time did people get more money who asked for more money? And she said, the majority of the time, those who asked for more money actually got it. And I said, what percentage of the time did somebody who asked for more money wind up talking themselves out of the job because you made them an offer, they asked for more, and their offer for more just, sent them to cost them the opportunity for the job. And she said, oh, that never happened.
Right. They don't
If you
resign the offer.
Yeah, they don't rescind the offer just because you ask for more money. So here it is. She was telling me there's absolutely no cost to asking for more and huge upside. I remember she was telling me one guy straight out of college got, I think, an extra, was it 80,000 a year,
Yeah.
something, extreme. And yet almost none of the women she'd interviewed had done it. And that was a real eye opener for me because we talk about the difference in pay in the workforce between men and women. And she was like, that was a factor that I'd never really thought of, is
Hmm.
that is that fear of rejection, that men are more comfortable apparently in the HR setting asking for more and women are less comfortable. And so that's one of the reasons why men are making more in the workplace.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's a very powerful example that you shared in the book. And I actually already shared it with a number of my students because it is so important to understand this idea. The upside is huge and there's no downside. There really is no downside in asking for more. And the way you put it in the book, it just made it so clear. And it was such an eye opener of the impact of letting that fear of rejection holding you back. And the rejection is the fear of them thinking you're aggressive or you're greedy or whatever. It's all the same thing, right? And it's holding you back from making more money.
Exactly. And the person I love is this guy, Jia Zhang, who is here he was creating a startup and he'd gotten the guts to ask all of one person for funding for the startup. And the person had said yes. And then that funding disappeared. And so he's like, okay, I guess I have to close my doors. And because he was so afraid of asking people for money. And his wife's like, no, no, no. We made an agreement. You're going to spend this much time building your company. Don't walk away because this one funder walked away. You've got 3 months left until I'm going to allow you to quit. And so he created this thing. He's like, what am I going to do about this? I'm so afraid. It's absolutely debilitating. And he found this thing called rejection therapy that this guy had created, like this game where you actually go out and have to get yourself rejected. It's just like, that's brilliant. I'm going to try that. Here's what I'm going to do. Every day for 100 days, I'm going to go and get myself rejected. And I'm going to blog about it. And over the 100 days, I'm going to get over my fear of rejection. So day one, he goes up to the security guard in his building and he says, hey, can I have $100? And the guy says no. But he says, but why'd you want the money? And he's like, okay, well, you know what? That wasn't as bad as I thought. Actually, the guy wanted to know the reason. Maybe if I had a good enough reason, he would have said yes.
Right.
And the next day goes to Five Guys Burgers and he sees a sign for free refills on drinks. I was like, I don't want a free refill on drinks. I want a free refill on my burger. So he goes up to the stand and he says, can I get a refill on burgers? And the guy's like, no, we only have refills on drinks. He's like, well, why? You can refill one just like you refill the other. And the guy's like, I don't know. Good question. And again, it wasn't this really harsh, embarrassing response. The
Nothing
guy was actually
happened.
open.
He didn't die.
But the third day was the best. He goes into Krispy Kreme and he asks the woman behind the counter, he says, I want you to make me donuts that are arranged like the Olympic rings, like one inside the other. And she says, when do you need that by? He says, 15 minutes. And she says, okay, let me see what I can do. And he's like, what? That's not the point. No, no, no. The point was I was supposed to get rejected. The point I was supposed to ask absurd things and you were supposed to say no. And here this woman goes and she makes him these donuts in the shape of the Olympic rings. And he blogs on this. And all of a sudden, this goes totally viral, goes nationwide. He's being interviewed on all these shows. This guy who is afraid of being rejected a week earlier is now being called the rejection whisperer. He's offered his own TV show. He's thinking about, he's going through this in order to raise money for a startup. And he actually realizes he can make more money teaching people about rejection because people want to hear a story than he could from the startup. He closes the startup and he goes and becomes a rejection teacher.
It's such a great story. It's such a great story. I remember my mother always used to say, what's the worst that can happen? That you get a no, which works, it really worked for me. I'm very big on asking and I'm not so scared of rejection. But I remember I had a conversation on the podcast a while back with Michelle Poller, who also, did the 100 Days of Fears, Hello Fears and whatnot. And when I shared this, she says, yeah. But you know what? Really, it's what's the best that can happen when you switch it around. If you really actually, because what's the worst that can happen? Well, actually, it could sting, or you could die, or you could get hurt, or whatever. But if you change your brain to what's the best that can happen, Yael, then now we're talking. So it really landed well with me. So now I try to think of, what's the best that can happen if I actually go for the ask, right?
Absolutely. And this goes back to our shrinking the change things. So if you, for instance, spend months preparing the perfect pitch for the ideal podcast you want to be on, and then you send it to this podcaster and put all your hopes on this, you know what? You're likely going to face rejection, and it's all that work. And oh, wow, I was all for nothing. But like when I came out with my book, The Cash Machine, I decided, you know what? Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to reach out to 5 people every single day. And I always reach out to them the last thing before I went to bed. Why? Not because it was an ideal time to reach out. If anything, it was the worst because if they wrote right back to me that I couldn't be in communication with them. Because I'd made a commitment to myself that I'm not going to go to sleep until I reach out. And like I said, I have big fear of rejection. So I wasn't sending the messages, but before I went to bed, okay, I had to send the messages. So every night before I went to bed, I finally get around to sending out my five things. And I want to meeting amazing people, being on incredible shows, because each request was so small, each reach out, I'd say half the people never responded to me at all. Of the half that did, probably 60, 80% said, no, we're not interested. But from those remaining few, I had gotten these amazing shows. I made amazing connections. And since each reach out was so easy, it took a few minutes. It wasn't a big deal. I was doing so many then that the no's didn't hurt so much. That's another way that we can really minimize the impact. It's much better to fail very small. So each reach out was a very small failure, the ones that got no's, rather than one giant failure. And so they really didn't sting, but the positive sides of them really added up.
Yeah. And it expands your capacity to deal with rejection, right? It also expands your comfort zone. And not only that, on a very practical level, then you get to fine tune your message. You get to become so much better that when one of those ends up being a really big podcast, you've had so much practice at this point because you were able, you didn't put your hopes on one, right? You tried so many and you went on so many.
Exactly. And the flip side is also, we talked about the reach outs, but also how to give an interview.
Exactly.
I realized when I first started going on podcasts, I don't know how to be interviewed. I don't know how to give a good interview. I need to do this over and over and over again so I get comfortable. Yeah. In fact, going back to the same Ecuadorian rainforest, at the same time we were there, coincidentally, when we were filming the Size of Your Dreams course, I was also doing this fabulous marketing course called One Funnel Away with Russell Brunson. And he made this point. He said, if you publish every day for a year, it will change your life. And this whole idea of, I'd been afraid of being on video for so long. We didn't even have a videographer at our wedding. I always thought I looked awkward on video. I just never wanted to record myself. I used to not even leave messages on voicemail, on answering machines when I was younger, even before voicemail. Like I'd never liked to be recorded. It's this thing I had. And this whole idea, if I just go on video and I record myself every single day for a year, that's going to have huge impact. So I started making all of these daily videos. And at first they were really bad. But over time, I worked on my audio, I worked on my lighting, I worked on my cameras, I worked on my scripts. I learned how to present on camera, and I got over that fear on the camera. I used to literally, I have this thing that I do. I jump up and down, I'd scream, I love the camera loves me. I love the camera loves me. That's what I'd have to do before I could hit record. I'd have to
Right.
do that for like 5 minutes until I could feel good enough to hit record. But like now I didn't have to do that for this interview
Right.
because I've done it so many hundreds of times.
Right. I love that part. Sometimes we have to trick ourselves. We have to trick our brains to get us to do the thing that we have to do. Sometimes even switching it a little bit to money, which I know you'll appreciate. Sometimes I tell people, look, if it's very hard for you to sit down with your numbers, to, sit down on your money dates or your money meetings or your money parties, whatever you want to call it, then psych yourself up. Go for a run first. Time it that it's always after you go to your Zumba class or after you exercise. Do something that's already you're gonna be in a good mood, and then transition into this thing. We gotta. It's interesting because all of this boils down to how can I help myself psychologically, right? How can I engineer things so that I actually do what I need to do from a deep soul level, right? Because there's a part of me that's
Absolutely.
stopping me.
Absolutely. Which is a great segue into the failure playlist, which is one of my tools for that.
Yeah, tell
So
us.
I had this big fear of loss, big fear, especially like in investing. Here I am, I'm this guy who teaches about money, but I always had a big fear if I make the wrong
Financial
choice, say in
move.
a stock investment or something, that the loss is hard for me. But it got even worse when I got married, I think, because here I feel like, you know what, I'm making the decision. It's not just my money anymore. I can handle the loss to me, but wow, I just lost money that my wife lost it. I'm going to be so embarrassed in front of her, knowing that we just lost money. I made a bad choice. And that was kind of debilitating for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I shared this with my wife, and I said, we need to come up with a technique for this, because really it was in my head. Like, she was totally supportive. She's like, I trust you, do what you want to be doing. I said, you know what will really help me? If after we make a mistake, if we can put on what we now call the failure playlist, and we can dance, we can have a dance party together. So whenever like one of us makes a big mistake, you know, rather than beating each other up about it or beating ourselves up about it or not sharing with the other one, we put on the failure playlist, and it starts off dun 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 dun, another one bites the dust, and we like both dance to another one bites the dust, and we're celebrating. We're not celebrating the failure. We're celebrating the fact that we felt bold enough to go out there and try. And okay, failure happens. And so when it happens, let's laugh about it. Let's sing, let's dance, and let's try to feel good, because really there's a huge connection between your body and your mind. If you think about when someone's depressed, they hold their body in a certain way.
Right.
When somebody's excited, they hold their body in a certain way. And so by choosing to put on this music and dance and like jump up and down, we're telling our mind, no, this is how you react. It's like
Mm-hmm.
you can think a certain depressing thought and your body will follow, or an uplifting thought and your body will follow, or you can reverse it and you can hold your body in a certain way, and that will shift the thought, because the two have to be in sync. So
Right.
by playing the music and dancing, we shifted the thought process, we shifted the whole pattern in our heads.
Yep. Going back to the example that I was giving you, I always tell people then when you're going to be in those money dates, play your favorite music, eat your favorite bar of chocolate, do whatever you need to do so that you have a different feeling and your body is in a different state. And this is just fascinating. Actually, when you were describing you and Hannah dancing, your wife, I was thinking that's the Masons for you. And it brought me back to an example in the book where I actually did not know that somebody who had been through the Masons home was Jenny Goldfarb of Unreal Deli. She's been on the show before. She's also a friend. And there was a really good example related to her raising the capital from Shark Tank. Do you want to share that with us? And it was in contrast to Barbara Corcoran's, right? Investment in another company.
Yes, exactly. So I shared the difference between two different Shark Tank pitches. One of them was called Mixed Bikini. That's the one that Barbara Corcoran invested in. And the Mixed Bikini idea was very simple, was that rather than buying a bikini with a matching top and bottom, that you could search separately for the tops and bottoms, and you can mix and match and get one component at a time. And Barbara thought it was a good idea. She put, I think, $50,000 into it. And they had this giant party to celebrate the Shark Tank being launched, and they had, you know, it was at this big pool and lots of people in bikinis and lots of alcohol, and they're all partying through the night for the launch of this thing. And the guy wakes up the next day hungover, drags himself to the office to see how many millions of sales he'd made the night before, how rich he was, to find that nobody had bought from him. And you might think that it's because nobody thought the idea was a good one. But no, it was actually because so many people loved it that they stormed to his website, and his website was completely unable to handle the volume, and it crashed. And I asked, so you call her Jenny Goldfarb. In our house, she is known exclusively as Cool Jen. She's earned that name long before she was Mrs. Goldfarb. And she earned it. So I asked Cool Jen about her whole launch process and what they went through. And she got one of the fastest deals in Shark Tank history.
Yeah.
Mark Cuban loved the product, gave her more money than she was asking for, upped her valuation. It was super duper successful. And, I asked about the whole process, how did you make sure that things like this didn't happen? And this is a category of things that considered to be foreseeable failures.
Mm-hmm.
So there are certain failures that fail for really obvious foreseeable reasons all the time. So a good example of this is surgery, is airline flights.
Mm-hmm.
There tend to be the same handful of reasons that cause a lot of the problems in these areas.
Mm-hmm.
And so for an area like that, they've really started instituting simple checklists. It's, if you look at what a doctor is now expected to do before going to surgery, it seems kind of idiotic. It's
Right.
okay, the person's name is this, and we're operating on this, and it's on that. They're going through basic things that everybody knows. But you know what? It's something like 30, they've reduced the amount of errors 30% just by going through the basics. There are all these instances where somebody operated on the wrong side of the patient's body from where the problem was, because they hadn't double checked it before going through. Same thing with flights. Pilots, they're going through, they're doing the ABCs as they're sitting in the cockpit. The things they're going through on their checklist are so simple and obvious, but the ramifications for messing them up are so disastrous. Now, a whole plane can go down, that airlines expect a pilot to go through all of these various checks. And that's basically what Cool Jen explained when she launched with Shark Tank, was that, she met with the team, and Mark Cuban had all these checklists of things. What are the things we have to do? He wanted her site to be on Shopify, which was a platform that was robust enough that it could handle this huge influx that they're expecting from Shark Tank launch night. Why Barbara Corcoran hadn't done that with the mixed bikini, I don't know. Maybe it was just earlier in the series, she hadn't thought to check it. But the idea that millions of people or thousands and thousands of people would go to a website after they see it on national TV is so to be expected. And the idea that you have to test to make sure that the website is robust enough to handle that should have been so obvious that it should have been caught. But sometimes we miss things because we consider them so obvious we don't think about them.
Right.
So we look at foreseeable causes of failure. Checklists are awesome. What are the most foreseeable causes? Think about them beforehand. Make sure you go through them. If you're dealing with unforeseeable causes, if you're dealing with areas where once you got all the foreseeable ones down, that's an area where simulations can be used extremely effectively. And we talked about NASA does this obsessively.
Right.
Is that, every minute in space is so incredibly expensive. It's so incredibly valuable. And the ramifications for messing up are so disastrous that they test failure scenario after failure scenario after failure scenario. They got one of the biggest, if not the biggest pool in the world. And they use it in order to do all of their, being underwater is similar to being in space, and that the buoyancy underwater in the right settings can make you feel weightless in space. So they just run all of these simulations over and over and over again underwater until they have them down, and they test what if this goes wrong? What if there's a fire? What if you die in space? What are we going to do? That's one of the examples we looked at. Chris Hadfield, they ran a simulation where he died in space, and they looked at all the ramifications. Well, what's going to happen if you die? What are all the different things you have to handle? And his wife, after doing that simulation, realized, you know what? She was planning on being in Tibet hiking during his trip to Earth. It's actually, wow, I hadn't thought about the ramification. They wouldn't be able to reach me. It would be a whole disaster. I'm gonna hike where people can actually get in contact with me and where I'm not that far away while he's gone. She shifted her
Mhm.
travel plans just based on the simulation they did of his death in space. These are a couple different ways that we can handle failure, whether it's something that is very foreseeable or very unforeseeable.
As you're talking about the example of NASA, which you use a few examples in the book, I remember there's a point in the book where you said that the incident with Ilan Ramon would have been you describe a different scenario of what actually happened, and you said it could have been NASA's greatest moment. I remember reading that line and being like, "Oh my gosh, Dave is so right. It could have been NASA's greatest moment." Can you share with us what that would have been, what it was, and what that would have been?
Yeah, so Ilan Ramon, for whoever doesn't know, is the most famous pilot in Israeli history. He was actually one of the pilots who blew up the Iraqi Osirak nuclear reactor, which literally could have led to like nuclear war when we had the Gulf War if Israel hadn't taken it out. But his most famous mission is actually when he was on the spaceship Columbia. And upon launch, a big chunk of foam broke off and hit the wing of the Columbia. And now, at the time, nobody noticed.
Right.
It's going so fast, but it hit the wing at like 500 miles per hour. But NASA has actually really great failure detection software. They're excellent at finding problems. And they watched every second of the launch in super duper slow motion, frame by frame, to look for any problems that could have arisen during the launch. And
Hmm.
that's when they discovered the next day that this piece of foam had broken off and struck the wing. And the fear here was that, when the space shuttle gets into orbit, it has to move so incredibly fast that it's not that there's no gravity in orbit. There's actually about 90% of the gravity we experience on Earth. You get into orbit by moving so fast sideways that you don't fall back into Earth. And the problem is that when you re-enter, you're going from no resistance, you're moving incredibly fast, you have no resistance because there's no friction in space. You get into the atmosphere where there's all this resistance and it heats up and it creates an incredible amount of heat on the outside of the craft. So all spacecrafts, human-bearing spacecrafts, have to have heat shields to
Hmm.
protect the craft and the people inside from this incredible amount of heat that forms on the outside of the vehicle. And the fear was that one of the heat-resistant tiles that were supposed to protect the space shuttle could have cracked when the foam hit it.
Hmm.
And at least 3 different requests were made to check and see if there was damage. They could have sent somebody outside to a spacewalk and examined the tile, or they could have actually just taken a picture from one of the satellites they were passing to see if there was a problem. And all the requests were denied. They didn't actually investigate it. And this is one of in the section about like investigating failure. It's good that they investigated and they found a potential problem, but you have to be brave enough to face the repercussions. Sometimes I
Yeah.
know in my life, like I don't even want, when I mess up badly, I don't even want to go and examine it because I'm so afraid of what it's going to reveal. I don't want to face the negative side. So I just kind of bury my head in the sand. And that's what NASA did. They really buried their heads in the sand. And they only told the pilots before reentry about the potential problem. And that wasn't even to fix it. It was just so they know how to answer the media's questions after they got back to Earth. But of course, they were coming back to Earth. There was a broken tile. It heated up and it caused the Columbia to explode and everyone aboard, of course, to die.
Hmm.
But what was remarkable about the timing was that just a few weeks later, the space shuttle Atlantis was supposed to launch. And, when somebody's up in space, the problem is not actually lack of oxygen or lack of resources. The problem is actually carbon dioxide buildup.
Hmm.
That there's only so much you can handle. There's only so long people can be in space. And this person had done a fabulous analysis on it, actually. They looked at, okay, what were the resources aboard the shuttle? How long could they have lived in space before things became a problem? They would have died from carbon dioxide buildup. And they realized that, you know what, had they just put everything in low power mode, had they, right after the first day when they discovered the foam strike, had they just said, you know what, we're just going to kind of the less you move your body, the less we move electricity we put on. We're going to shut everything down. We're going to go low power mode, and you're just going to let it coast so we don't have this buildup of carbon dioxide, and so our energy is able to last for a month. And then they retrofit the Atlantis. They could have sent the Atlantis up, gotten everybody off the Columbia, and back down to space. It would have been this incredible space rescue.
Right.
And literally, if you think about Apollo 13, I mean, the whole world came together. People were praying around the world. Even the Soviet Union, in the middle of the Cold War, said to America, you know, we are happy to dedicate some ships to searching the whole area where you're expecting the capsule to come down to help rescue the astronauts. Like the whole world literally was glued to their TVs, was watching this, was praying for the astronauts on board. It was such an incredible moment of coming together. And it would have taken about a month to retrofit the Atlantis and get it to launch into space. A lot of things would have happened. A lot of people would have had to coordinate together, but we would have done it.
Yeah.
We would have done it. We would have all been watching. We would have all been praying. We would have all been together for this thing. It would have been literally NASA's greatest moment to be sending up another shuttle up to be rescuing the people from the Columbia. But instead, because they didn't want to face the results, never happened. Columbia burns up in the atmosphere. And from this point on, basically the shuttle program gets scrapped. NASA is out of the space exploration game, shockingly. People are getting to and from the International Space Station with these Russian Soyuz crafts, not NASA space shuttles. And the next time we had launched astronauts from US soil was SpaceX. It went from NASA to private industry because of this gigantic failure. And because they weren't willing to face when they saw a problem, they were avoiding and not going towards it.
So it's not enough, like you said, they are very good at identifying problems. It's not enough to foresee a problem, identify a problem, but this really speaks to a flexibility, right? To be able to change plans, right? You think there is a plan, you're going somewhere, but something happens, there's a problem, and then you have to be flexible enough to change, which speaks to that growth mindset oh my gosh, Mrs. Dweck
Yes.
wrote about so brilliantly, right? That we often get so stuck. And there is a big connection here between the fear of failure and the risks involved, and just getting stuck in this mindset where we can't just expand.
Absolutely. And it's facing that and being able to see our difficulties and seeing our failures and grow from them is so huge. And here I am in Israel, and this year has been incredible that way in Israel. We had one of the biggest, if not the biggest, in the history of our country, of course, on October 7th. And it's been a mix of incredible tragic, but also I've never seen people come together. I've never seen so many people shift around their entire lives and give of themselves and come to support each other the way I have this year. I mean, it's in many ways, I've seen a lot of the most beautiful acts of my life this year following this incredibly difficult period. And it was mixed at times. There's often like the sitting with the tragic and sitting with the change. And this was really, it was not optional. Sometimes you have the option to avoid facing it. It's like, and there are people who said, you know what, I want to leave. I don't want to be part of this. But really, we couldn't really run from this together as a nation. And I think as a people, I think we grew tremendously this year. And it's been an incredible year to be in Israel.
Yeah.
But part of that is because we had no choice but to face this gigantic failure that just impacted so many of our lives.
And it's a testament to the power of the power, the resilience, and the power of uniting, but also to know that we are able to change in ways that we don't imagine. We're more flexible than we give ourselves credit for. And taking it back to personal life and business life, and fear of failing in that area, I think, Dave, there's a big element of curiosity that I think it's one of the best qualities that one can have when one is in business, or and it's very often overlooked how important being curious is. I wonder what's your take on it and how it can help us deal with, and how it can help us turn failure into success.
Absolutely. And I like to put two concepts together here is curiosity and also play, which
Yes.
really go hand in hand. And I know for my business that early on, I was doing really well. I was in the right place at the right time, and I was having a lot of fun. I was playing. And then we wound up making certain financial commitments that went bad. We got ourselves in a difficult financial spot that didn't really have to do with the business as much at the time. But after that, because I felt all this pressure to me, for the first time, I felt all this pressure to be making money. The business stopped being fun. It stopped being play. It started being serious. And my creativity just went through the floor. And ironically, the harder I worked in my business, the worse the business performed. It's like when the business was just a lot of fun for me, I'd try all these things and I'd be curious, hey, what if we do this? What if we
Exactly.
do that? And the business was doing awesome. And once I had this financial pressure, it's like I couldn't do it anymore. Suddenly it was so serious. I had to make the right decision. And ironically, I made a lot less right decisions. I
Right.
did far, far worse because of the seriousness. And I had a harder time motivating myself to work because I wasn't enjoying it anymore. I was pushing myself, you got to do this, Dave, rather than I get to do it. And hey, let's try this. That fun, playful, curious energy was just gone. And I find I'm so at my best when I have that experimentation and just enjoy the process.
Yeah, it sometimes makes me it makes me love having a business that is lean, like I don't have to create this massive thing that I have to be responsible for a lot of people's salaries, and it just gives me the flexibility to still play and have fun and mess things up. I don't know if that's a good attitude, but it's working so far.
It's big. And that was a big part of my pressure as well, is that really I saw the opportunity. I knew a lot of people who needed jobs and I wanted to create jobs for people. I wound up hiring a lot more people than the business could actually handle.
Right.
And then I felt so serious about, oh no, now I need to make it successful enough to be paying for all of them. And I wound up actually going into debt to be paying salaries of staff I didn't need,
Right.
because here I put all this pressure on myself that I had to be, this provider for all of these people, as opposed to having a really tight, lean business that I was enjoying and that provided for me and my family and allowed me to take some of that money and then give tzedakah, give charity, do good things
Mhm.
with it outside of it, as opposed to making the business a charity in and of itself.
I'm curious about, you talk about risk reversal in the book, and I can't remember what that's about, but I know it's a really important part. What is the concept of risk reversal?
So let's go back to that story when I talked about running this course and all these people had paid good money for the course. And we said, here we are, we're going to hurry up and fail. And they started cheering. Remember, I said there were three reasons why I felt they were cheering. And these are the three things I explore about how you can avoid failing on others. You can avoid if you do mess up, that all these people are not going to have to pay the price for you messing up.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them, as we already talked about, was that, you know what, I let them in on my journey and they were much more excusing of my failures because they wanted to be along for the ride and see this whole process and learn as I was going. And the people who let me in on their journey, I was excited, and I knew they weren't going to do something perfect, but I was excited to see the process in play. But another one is this one, risk reversal. And risk reversal, very simply, is saying that, if you fail, you're not going to fail on them. So if here I was teaching a course they paid good money for. Now, if I'd been going into surgery and the doctor said, you know what, I've never tried this surgery before, but you know what, I figured I'd hurry up and fail. Or if I got on a plane and the pilot said, you know what, I've never actually flown before outside of a simulator, but hey, what the heck, let's hurry up and fail.
Dave Mason
I'd be
said,
freaking
hurry up and
out.
fail.
I'd be freaking out because if they messed up, who would pay the price? I would.
Right.
Risk reversal is flipping that around. Risk reversal is saying the reason why nobody was afraid that my failure was going to mess them up is because we gave them a full money back guarantee. We said that, look, I think we might have even been a 10x guarantee. We're like, if you don't get 10 times the value, if you paid $200 for this course, whatever it was, if you don't get $2,000 worth of benefit from it, let us know and we'll give you your $200 back.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I think I did the 10x guarantee at a later course. This one was just, if you don't like it, get your money back. And
Mm-hmm.
so there wasn't this big risk of failure on their part. If I did go down in flames and I did do a bad job, then all these people would just ask for their money back and they wouldn't have lost anything at the end of the day.
Right.
So there was no fear on their part that my failure was going to hurt them.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing, since we talked about two of the three things we did to really mitigate those failures, the other one is to go above and beyond expectations. So here
Mm.
this was a 6-week course with 2 hours per week. But because we hadn't taught this material before, we didn't really know what people were going to want, people were going to need. And so whenever we discovered another avenue that we hadn't built into the course that we thought, okay, this could provide some benefit, we'd create these bonus sessions. We'd create additional things. We gave people more than they bargained for. And this had a lot to do with the fact that basically nobody asked for their money back. One person the first time had a scheduling conflict, and one person after the first class, like, okay, no, I thought it was something else. But otherwise, of the 60 or so people who signed up, none of them asked for their money back. And part of it was that we kept adding additional bonuses. So they were expecting 12 hours of content. We probably gave them, 15 or 20 hours.
Mm-hmm.
One week I talked about some of my business tactics and someone's like, hey, I'd love to know more about your business things. Like, okay, great. You know what? This Wednesday I'll do a bonus session. I'm going to go through my top business tactics. And of the 60 people, maybe 12 of them showed up for that.
Right.
But this idea that you should always create a certain expectation. Now you might think that if people are paying good money, you want to create expectations as high as possible. But if you create really high expectations, people are often then disappointed if you don't live up to them.
Mm-hmm.
So what we want to do is we want to create high expectations, but then find a way to go even higher.
Mm-hmm.
Always hold a certain amount of things back,
An
certain
element of
amount of bonus,
surprise.
little element of surprise. I was pointing out in this chapter that I did Marie Forleo's B School, which I had paid $2,000 for. And I noticed that Marie kept throwing in these bonuses that I wasn't expecting. So even though I spent $2,000, I came away feeling like I got more than I bargained for.
Right.
As opposed to, there was a piece of software I bought for like $50. It was a really good piece of software and it came with a lifetime deal and it was a fabulous package. And I got this message from the CEO saying that he would take me personally through the software. That I want to sign up for the session? And I said, yeah, that sounds amazing. And in fact, I had my assistant sit in on the call because I thought she'd get a lot of value out of it. And then we sign up for this, go to the session, and the CEO is not there. Somebody else is there. And I said, well, where's the CEO? And he said, oh, he can't do these meetings on his own. And here it was, I'd gotten this incredibly valuable piece of software for an incredibly cheap price. And I had somebody personally giving me a demo. But because they'd offered a demo with the CEO and they gave me a demo with somebody else, I actually came away feeling disappointed. If you look at
Wow.
value for money, I got so much more value for my money from the $50 piece of software that I continue to use to this day, than I had for the $2,000 course. But because the $2,000 course gave me more than I asked for, more than I expected, and the $50 piece of software gave me less than I expected, I was bummed with one. I left them a slightly negative review, and I was ecstatic with the other. So it's like we create expectations and we have to make sure we go beyond, and then people will be very forgiving of us in our process if we just give additional things they're not expecting from us.
Mm-hmm. 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 So Dave, now that we've kind of analyzed the failure and the hurry up and fail and how to engineer it and different things that we can do to mitigate risk and risk reversal, as you just mentioned, what would be some parting words of encouragement for those people who are listening and saying, I don't know, I just there is the fear still holding me back. Like, why should I, what I and they see the pattern in themselves that it keeps coming up.
Shrink the change. Little, small steps that are not scary. Use that first to be building momentum. So this
Mm-hmm.
goes back to me creating a video every day. In fact, in the Size of Your Dreams course, Dream Design Manifest, we called it, one of the participants, like me, was afraid to get on camera.
Mm-hmm.
And I told him, look, me getting on camera every day, at that point, I'd done it for several years, is what let me get over my fear. I want you to do the same. I want you to be recording tomorrow. You have to record a video. You've got to post it to the entire group. And it's like, I don't know what to post about. I said, okay, here's what I want you to do. I want you to record a video saying, I'm recording a video because Dave told me I had to,
Exactly.
and post it. That's it. And for your first video, I'll let you get away with that. And he did. He recorded a video saying, I'm recording this video because Dave told me I had to. And he posted it to the group. And he said he felt great about it. And the next day he posted another video saying, I'm recording this video because Dave said I had to. I said, no, 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 no. I told you could get away with that once. The next one, I want you to improve. Look at your first video. Look at things you can do better. Now for the second one, actually share something that you care about. And he did, and he kept posting additional videos, but really, really small steps at first. That's how we build momentum.
Right.
You know, there's this James Clear in his book on Atomic Habits talks about, you know, even these 2-minute things. Like for me, I sit, I go to the Dave and Josh, I go to the study hall, and I write my books. And sometimes I know, okay, I don't really feel like I have much to write about. I feel like there's nothing I want to be working on at the moment. And I was thinking about this. I was reading Clear's words when he talks about, you know what? Just set a goal to go to this place where you write and write one sentence.
Mm.
If that just the act of doing that, if you think, oh, I'm supposed to go there and write my 2,000 words or whatever it happens to be, the goal I set myself, I don't know if I have the energy for that today. No, no, no. Make it small. If you can tell yourself you need to go to your writing spot, open up your software, get in your writing mood, get all your stuff there, and write one sentence, the odds are you're not going to stop. You've already gotten yourself in the groove, and you're going to keep going. So I think a big problem that people have with failure is that they set these goals that are large and that intimidate them.
Right.
And so
Right.
that's what we're talking about with really shrinking the change. Fail fast, fail cheap, fail often. Find ways to do very small, little granular things in the area you're afraid about, and then tweak and build momentum over time.
Yeah.
This idea of this huge failure, you're probably not going to wake up one day and be ready to jump into it. But
Right.
if you
Right.
can engineer something even smaller, you can probably do that even today.
Yeah, and I love that how you explain that. And it's not to say that the goals don't have to be big, even in the size of your dreams. The idea of you can have a big goal, but breaking it into smaller pieces and the action steps that you have to do today. Like you said, today, before I go to bed, I have to send 5 emails, right? I have to make 5 pitches for 5 podcast hosts. That's doable, like, right? So the dream can be really big, but the working towards that dream really happens. The momentum is in the small steps that you can actually hold yourself accountable for, rather than making these big leaps, expecting these big leaps from yourself that you'll just give up on yourself.
Exactly. And now I'm going to share something very counterintuitive.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're leaving Harry and Fail. We're going to the size of your dream space. But in the size of your dreams, for people who don't know, it's this novel that my wife and I wrote. It's very much about how to be achieving different goals in your life. And people will have these note cards where they have, I'm going to hit this goal by this date. And to get there, I'm going to follow these steps. And you read this off and you follow these steps to get to your goal. But actually, the surprising counterintuitive part is the steps don't have to logically get you to the goal.
Mm.
This is the thing people miss. They have a goal and they don't see how they can get there.
Right.
So they don't start. What we teach in the size of your dreams is you come up with your goal and come up with the date you're going to hit it by, and then come up with the best steps you can think of now. Those steps have to move you towards the goal. They don't have to be good enough to get you all the way there. The idea before you start the goal, you're going to know exactly what is going to be the magic sauce to get you there is a total fallacy.
Right.
When people set out to do big things, you look at like Elon Musk planning on going to Mars. He's got this gigantic goal that he wants to hit. The idea that when he came up with that goal, he was going to know exactly the steps, have a blueprint in his mind of all the things that are going to have to happen to get to Mars, total nonsense. All he had to do was get things to move forward. And then you learn, well, you know what? This isn't working. Let's cross that off the list.
Right.
Oh, this other thing that I move forward and I discover this other bit. I need to add that in there. I need to add new steps. Your steps are going to get stronger. So don't make your goals as small as what you know realistically right now you can hit. You want to have a goal that is big, that is ambitious, that is above your head that you don't know how to reach. And you start moving towards it even before you have the recipe for getting there.
Mhm.
And that moving towards it is what allows you to learn what it takes to get there.
Beautiful, beautiful. So, Dave, as we wrap up, what's in the pipeline? What big project is going on that you're willing to go at it and fail?
Whew. Several. Let's see. On the book front, I'm working on a couple right now. I've
Mm-hmm.
got the third book in the Age of Prophecy series. That's my biblical fiction series,
Mm-hmm.
and working on that one. And also came up with another book in the Cash Machine Size of Your Dreams type series. Um, we call it the pizza experiment, but it's probably going to be called It Takes Money to Lose Money when it
Mm,
comes out. This is a book that teaches, it's like a scrappy business book that
right.
teaches, I've been actually learning how to be doing low cost business acquisition. I did this whole training where they teach you literally how to buy businesses for $1
Mm-hmm.
and how to go in, how to optimize businesses, how to be turning businesses around. And so this novel actually follows a lot of those ideas. It actually follows the main character is a 19-year-old college sophomore who's taking a seminar on how to build a business.
Ooh.
And at the time is, you know, is dead broke and is working at this pizzeria so that he can, get a little bit of money and, and get himself off the meal plan. He just eats the free employee slices all day long. And at a certain point, the owner just tells him, he's like, look, this isn't working. I'm sorry, I've got to shut it down. And here he is, this guy's suddenly unemployed. He doesn't know where he's getting any money. He hasn't come up with an idea for his business yet for that he's supposed to build for the seminar. And his professor tells him, he's like, offer the guy $1. It's like it's going to cost him more money to shut down this business than it will to be passing it on to you.
Mm-hmm.
And so this sophomore with no money winds up taking over a failing business and figuring out how to be turning it around. So I'm teaching all these business skills. I always said the Cash Machine was not a book about how to make money. It was a book about how to make intelligent choices with the money you've
Right.
made. And then I
Right.
always promise my audience sooner or later I will write a business book, a small business book about how to actually make it. So that's what this book is.
Amazing, amazing. And so if we want to learn more about Hurry Up and Fail, is there a course that comes along with it? Is there some bonuses that come along with the book? Tell us about that.
Yeah, I've actually got a failure scorecard on there that can help you see exactly where you weigh up in terms of your own ability to go out there and fail. The book, by the way, I'm happy to give it away totally for free. It's already line free. I keep making it free on Amazon. They're kind of you can't make things intentionally free on Amazon, but there's a back door
Oh.
that keeps being free, and then they make it unfree, and I make it free again. But you can go to my website, davemason.coach, and download a free copy, or you can check if it happens to be free again on Amazon. I keep making it free again, so hopefully it should be by the time this podcast comes out. Um, Not looking to make any money on the books. I really just want to get them out there and teach people about how they can use these techniques more effectively in their lives. And you can go through on the scorecard and actually see how you do in this realm of failure.
I'm going to do the scorecard. I'm so excited. Dave Mason, I absolutely love this book. I love The Cash Machine. I happen to like all your books, but I think this one has become my favorite so far. Everybody go get it. Hurry Up and Fail. How Success Rises from the Ashes of Failure. Well done. Incredible examples, incredible analysis. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.